So to make your collar, you are going to bring out your shirt or whatever you want to sew the collar on, and then you take a measurement round the neckline. So you put them together like this and you take your round neck measurement. For me, this is 9.5 inches, and this measurement was taken on fold. So once this is done, you're going to bring out your collar stay and put it on fold into two. You mark your starting point, and then you go ahead and mark out your round neckline. Mine is 9.5 inches, so I'll mark that, and then I'll also mark the height of both my collar and my collar stand. So for me, that's 4.5, and then I'll connect both of them together. Once that is done, the next thing is to start shaping your collar. So for the collar stand, I'll come up by 1 inch on the outer end, not the fold point, and then I'll divide the neckline into two, as you can see, and I'll use my cuff to connect them together. So the next thing is to measure out our actual collar height. So I'm using 1.25 for the collar stand, and that is what I'm marking there. So I'll first connect the straight one, and then I'll use the curved side of the ruler to connect the slant one. So once that is done, you take your pattern master and then use the small curve there to shape the end of the collar stand, as you can see. So I'm shaping the end of my collar stand, and I'm making sure that the curve is as smooth as possible. So that is it for the collar stand. The next thing is to create the collar. So for the collar, on the fold point, I'm going to come up by 1 inch first, and then from there I'll measure the actual height of my collar. I'm using 1.75, so I'm measuring that. Then from the fold point again, I'll go in by 3 inches, and on that point I'll come down by half an inch, and then I'll take my curved ruler and then connect that together, then connect to the extreme end. If your curve can take all of them together at once, then you can use it. If not, then you can connect them in bits. So I'm just finding a way to have a very smooth connection, and then I'll go ahead and connect. The next thing is to come back to your collar stand and mark 1 inch inward. Then you connect to the end of your collar to form a slant, just like that. So that 1 inch you came up by first, you're going to connect it back to that end of your collar stand, and your collar is ready. So I'm going to shade out the parts we don't need now, so that both the collar and the collar stand is going to be obvious. So now that I've shaded it, you can see that is the collar stand and this is the actual collar. So if you want to style your collar anyhow, you can see that I'm increasing this one. So this can actually be styled anyhow. The 4.5 is just the starting point. So I'm making two shirts. That's why I'm putting the collar on fold, so that I can cut collar the two collars together. So after putting it on fold now, I'll grab my scissors and then cut out the shape that I have. So the shaded part is the part that we don't need. So the part that is not shaded is what you need. So that is our collar. The collar is out. Then I'll go ahead now and cut out the collar stand as well. So once you cut it out, this is what you are going to have. I have my collar and my collar stand like that. The next thing is to bring your fabric. I'll put the fabric on fold, and then I'm going to gum the collar still on it. So I'm spraying water on it so that it can gum very well. Once you gum it, you take it to your sewing machine and sew. Remember your fabric was on fold. You sew around your collar stay, and then you turn it out. That's for the actual collar. So you sew the collar first before you sew to the collar stand. So the next thing is to flip it over to the right side. Then you look for something to bring out the edges. The edges needs to come out really sharp. So when you are doing this, you have to be careful not to rip your seam. Just make sure that the corners come out really sharp, and then you take it to your ironing table and give it a very good press, so that it can relax. Collar stay can be very strong, so you need to iron it well so that it can relax properly. So now it is ironed, as you can see, and you can see that everything is laying flat. So now I'm going to notch the midpoint so that I can sew it to my collar stand easily. So now that's the collar stand. I've also glued it the same way I did for the collar, and I have two fabrics there, one for the main fabric and the other for the lining. So now you notch the midpoints as well, and then you match the midpoints together. So your actual collar is going to be in between the two collar stand. So it's going to be in between the lining and the main fabric of the collar stand. So once you match the center, you're going to pin each of them to the side. So you pin to the right and then you pin to the left as well, as the case may be. So once you are done pinning it, you take it to the sewing machine and sew. Gumming your collar stay on it, just it makes it easy. You know already where you're going to sew. So you're going to be sewing following the collar stay that you have there. The other ones are just the seam allowance. So you go ahead and take it to your sewing machine now and sew on it round. So I have done that. If you want, you can reduce your seam allowance, or you just place notches on it because it's a bit curved. So reducing it will just make it easier for you. It's not going to be so bulky. So once you are done sewing, you can reduce the seam allowance and then you flip it out again. So after flipping, we are going to take it back to the iron, and then we are going to iron this part flat as well. So it is ironed now. You can see that it is laying flat. So the next thing is for me to fold in the seam allowance on the collar stand. This is how I like to fix my collar. It's the easiest way I know. So I just fold in the two seam allowance with my iron first, and then I will easily slot in my shirt, my neckline in between. Then I'll go and top stitch. So you bring out your collar, and then you're going to slot the neckline of the collar in between the collar stand. Remember, you've already ironed the seam allowance inside, so it makes your work a whole lot easier. There are several ways you can actually attach your collar to your collar stand. I just believe this method is very, very easy, so I like to use this method. So now I'm going to sandwich the rest of the neck inside the collar, and then I'll hold it with my pin. So once it is held with my pin, I'll take it to my sewing machine and then I will sew on it. So once you do this, the next thing is just to sew it. So you can see that it is very easy to do. You make sure that nothing is rumpled. As you are doing it, you spread out the fabric. You check both on the right side and the wrong side. Make sure you are not picking the fabric together with the neckline. Make sure you spread everything out and you see that you are not picking any extra fabric. So once that is done, you can check the neckline. Then you can see I have sewn this. Then I'm going to check it to see that everything is correct. Then you take out your threads and your collar is ready. It's very, very easy to make using this method. You weave and clean up your shirt, and then you go ahead to make your buttons and your buttonhole. That is all you need to do. So I'll create my buttons and my buttonhole, and then my shirt is ready. So this is what it's going to look like. Can you see how perfectly the collar is sitting? You can see that it's sitting perfectly and it's looking really nice. I hope you enjoy making this with me.